They probably could have retitled this movie, Your Alexa Secretly Loves Murder. I went into Upgrade not really knowing a lot about what was entailed with regards to the actual plot of the movie. I knew about the angle of it, about a guy who gets implanted with this operating system into his body that basically can turn him into a superhero to do all kinds of like killer moves, and that he goes on kind of a death wish campaign. And also the fact that I heard a lot of people comparing this to the Venom trailer. You do have two protagonists with a full-on beard and short hair and looking disheveled and nervous whenever their body just goes and does something grisly. You have both protagonists having a voice in their head that they're talking to and arguing with about losing control. And that's really where the similarities stop for now until I see Venom, and Venom probably has the exact same plot as this movie. But that's all I went into Upgrade with, was just kind of those jokes in mind and the bare bones idea of what this movie was supposed to be about. There was a lot of stuff that was working for me and a lot of stuff that I found to be sort of, at first, very kind of hum and drum. The stuff that really works in this, Logan Marshall Green as the lead is a great lead for this character. His name is Gray. He and his wife end up in a car crash, and it turns out that these guys shoot his wife after the car crash. They drag him out of the car, shoot his wife, then paralyze him from the neck down, and then he receives this opportunity to have this implant called STEM put into him that'll basically be like an operating system for him and will help him walk again. And it's being given to him by this reclusive billionaire tech guru who looks shifty and just all over weird and untrustworthy from the get-go. And then he goes about the Death Wish, or the RoboCop plot, as it were. He tries to track down the people who killed his wife. It follows that plot pretty steadily for a majority of the film. And there's a point where you're kind of like, okay, well, I know what the reveal's gonna be. You kind of lull yourself into believing this movie is just going to stick to that trope plot, that standard plot of, oh, it's all gonna lead back around and the creator is going to be your ultimate nemesis. That's where I thought this movie was going for a majority of the film, and it didn't take away from the experience necessarily, because there is a lot to like. Like I said, Logan Marshall Green, who plays Gray here, I'd only seen him in Prometheus, I think, before this, and I didn't really like his character in Prometheus. He played Noomi Rapace's husband, lover, the guy who thought it was a great idea to take his helmet off in an atmosphere that they don't even know is healthy for them. That dude, he's really good as the lead here. He is really effective when he conveys his loss and his mourning, not just for his wife, but for the use of his legs. You get that. Like, it is a gut punch to see him. He's getting like a trim, a grooming for his beard from his mom, and he's just lying there in his chair, and he just breaks down crying, and it is kind of devastating. And then when he gets the implant, when he gets STEM, and he starts talking to this AI in his head that's operating his body and arguing with it, and they're kind of like an investigative duo for a good chunk of the movie. And whenever STEM kind of takes over and brutally beats or hacks and slashes people to death, the look of sheer astonishment and horror on Logan Marshall Green's face while his body is just doing violent shit is kind of hilarious. And this movie has a good sense of humor about itself. It's taking the premise as seriously as it can, but it acknowledges the silliness at times. When he gets into his first fight, it's in like a closed quarters, like a kitchen, and the dude reaches for a knife, and he's like, STEM, he's got a knife. And he's like, well, I'll take over then, Gray. And grabs the knife, and he's like, now we have the knife. And you can just hear the voice in his head, but the look of just sheer terror on Logan Marshall Green's face as he's just like, and he's like smashing plates into this dude's head. He's like, oh no, dude, stay down. Like, that's kind of hilarious. And I know that's probably been done before in other movies, certainly. It's gonna be done in another movie, a Marvel movie in a couple of months with Venom. It was really well done, really well executed, I should say. Overall, like, the fight choreography and the action sequences, they are effective. They aren't the best I've seen, but at least they're not, again, this handheld camera, frantic, chopping the action every millisecond to give you like a fit. It's actually handled really well. And you buy that this is a guy who has no control from here on down. Whenever he's even just walking around or doing things like pouring himself a drink after the operation, you get that sense of there's this fluidity that's just too fluid for human movement. It isn't like full on, I am a robot. It isn't anything like that. It isn't that chintzy. But his movements, like he'll turn a corner, and I know it's hard to do with me sitting down like this, but he'll turn a corner and he'll be like, sort of like a T-1000, except not as rigid, I would say. He's not as rigid as Robert Patrick's T-1000, but it is just enhanced further by the fact that his expression conveys a lot during these performances. When he's not fully sure of, like, am I in control or is STEM in control? When he even, like, takes off running down an alleyway in a T-1000 run, like, the just look of sheer panic on his face it sells you on that moment that he is out of control. So Logan Marshall Green is without a doubt the highlight of this movie. His kind of back and forth with the voice in his head that is STEM is well done, really well done at times. STEM can be kind of funny at times and have a dry kind of cold detached wit to him. It's almost as if Data from Star Trek The Next Generation was in your head talking to you, except Data was kind of more self-aware that he's a bit of a prick. While I was watching the movie, while I was enjoying the action sequences and enjoying some of the humor and comedy that is laced throughout this premise, part of me was always kind of thinking, like, I know exactly where this is going. This is like formulaic, plot beat for plot beat. I know where this is going to lead to, where the grand reveal is going to lead to with regards to who the true enemy is at the end of this. So, as it was gearing up for the final showdown, I was kind of thinking, like, where else are they going to go from here? I mean, it's kind of all cinched up. There's not much else to kind of surprise us or tantalize us with from this point forward. And then the last 15 minutes of the movie happen. And all of a sudden, it pulls a fast one on me that, now I'm looking back in retrospect, was laid out from the beginning. And this is the first movie I'll say of this year that's actually made me, like, go back and, like, rethink scenes, rethink scenarios. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was there that whole time. And I just completely glanced over it because you think it's going the way, like, a standard revenge action sci-fi movie like this will go. And again, in this last 15 minutes, when kind of everything's laid out there, you're kind of like, whoa, that has been there that whole time. It did take me by surprise. It genuinely shook me a little bit as to, oh, wow, this is where it's going. And it doesn't stop there. It doesn't even stop there, because once I realized, like, okay, here's where it's actually going. And then they're about to pull another kind of fast one. And I'm starting to think, this is about to go into some very Birdman ending style, or they're going to pull that whole, well, that could be what happened, but not really, or it was a dream the whole time type thing. Like, there was a point where I'm like, I've audibly said in the theater, no, don't do this, don't sully this great reveal with that. I really thought they were going to go for a cop-out. It pulls a fast one on me again, and ends on the bleakest, most depressing note that this movie could have pulled off, given all its plot details and given where it was going. This is the darkest way this film could end. At the end of it, as I was driving home, I was just going through the whole movie again in my mind, being like, yeah, this is actually a pretty well done script. It doesn't bang you over the head with where it's going, but the clues are there. The little hints are laced throughout the movie if you take the time to go back, and that's the thing. It makes me want to go back and rewatch certain parts, even though they kind of revealed like, oh, this was what was really going on at that time. I'm kind of like, no, I want to see it for myself. Like, I don't trust the movie at that point. So even though I was engaged throughout the entire viewing, at the very end I was like, well played, film. You got me. You genuinely got me. I would recommend you go check out this movie if you're a fan of the tech-noir, sci-fi, thriller type of movie that this is. If you love to see some pretty well choreographed action and with some dark humor laced throughout, and it's got some pretty visceral moments, some pretty intense sequences of violence. He almost tears the top half of a dude's head off at one point. There's a point where he's interrogating someone and he's like, oh, Stem, you take over, you do it, I can't watch. And he's just over here, and you just hear off to the side, and you're like, something really wet sounding and visceral and stabby is happening off screen. But then he turns back and it's just like a dude's face looks like it's shredded mozzarella cheese at that point. I was willing to accept it as just, okay, this is a standard action fare. I'm happy with just this. But this ended up really surprising me, like I said, in the last portion of the movie. Again, it wasn't anything that was just out of left field. It was there the whole time, and the movie did a good job of tricking me into ignoring those moments. You should go see Upgrade if anything about this premise or anything about the style of this movie that I mentioned appeals to you. Just order the tickets yourself in person. Don't trust your operating system. Don't trust your phone to do it for you, because like I said, all your technology wants to secretly kill things.